Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we are here with our next guest, and I'm always so excited to have veterans on, and he's doing big things in the state of Virginia, and I love Virginia. I went to college in Virginia. Virginia is, still in part of my heart. They say Virginia is for lovers, but he's running for the 7th District seat, and so pleased to welcome former Navy SEAL and Republican congressional candidate Cameron Hamilton to Veronica Live. Welcome, Cameron.
Hey, Veronica. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I want people to know your background and Navy SEAL. I mean, I want to go to war with you. So tell me about your background, Cameron.
Well, I would say I wouldn't want to go to war against me. That's for sure.
Oh, I like that. That's great.
My name is Cameron. I'm a former Navy SEAL. I served in the SEAL teams for 10 years. I grew up and joined the Navy fresh out of high school. And we were, old school kind of Reagan Republicans, more of a live and let live. But we were always conservative. And look, this country, though, has given me so much to be grateful for. And I thought it was my obligation and my great honor to give back to it. So I joined the military fresh out of high school, and I wanted to serve. I originally became a hospital corpsman in the Navy because the theory was, look, the SEAL teams has a pretty high attrition rate. And so you have to have, plans and actions. And I always wanted to be a medical provider. I believed in being both a warrior and a healer. So I became a hospital corpsman, and then I joined the SEAL teams. I graduated BUDS Class 261, became a special operator, so I lost my corpsman designation, but I was still a medic in the SEAL teams. It's kind of a unique time in the Navy. Served for 10 years, did 4 deployments, 2 to Afghanistan, 2 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. It was an absolute privilege. I was stationed in North Carolina for a bit, going through medical training there at the Special Warfare Center. Met my beautiful bride, Karen. She made me the luckiest man on the earth. And then she gave me 3 just amazing children. Right now they are 13, 12, and 10. Little rascals, as I call them, but they're just amazing kids. So we homeschool our kids. We live in Orange, Virginia. And I spent about then another 8 years after my time in the service working for the federal government in different capacities, both at the Department of State as well as with the Department of Homeland Security. Now I'm looking to serve the American people in a new way by running for Congress as a limited government constitutional conservative.
And how did you make the jump to that, Cameron? I mean, because it's a big jump, and then tell us too about the size of your district. Because I saw that Quantico. I went to George Mason. I've lived in Fairfax and Mount Vernon. So tell us your district as well. So how did you make the jump and why? Because that's amazing to want to serve us. And then tell us how big the district is.
Absolutely. So the district is fairly large. It's just shy of 1 million people. It encompasses 10 counties. It's from Madison, Greene, Culpeper, Orange, Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, Caroline, King George, Stafford, and then the eastern third of Prince William County. And there's also a sliver of Albemarle, kind of towards just north of Charlottesville. The district itself is about, 50% suburban and 50% rural. So it kind of has this unique demographic. And it also, because of its proximity to D.C., it's just southwest, and it's very close to the I-95. It actually engulfs both sides of the I-95 from Quantico all the way down to Spotsylvania. There's a lot of federal government employees. So it's a unique district where federal regulation, federal policy, appropriations bills, things that pertain to the nation of this country, or the national government, is not just state and local government, but the national government, are very much involved. And the voter and constituents here have a unique disposition towards being affected by federal regulation in a way that's unclassical for other districts across the country. I got in this race because I've worked for the federal government for virtually my entire career. I served for 10 years in the Navy and then worked for 5 years at the State Department protecting dignitaries and VIPs such as the Secretary of State, U.S. ambassadors overseas, and some of the more tourist-friendly locations like Somalia and other places like that. And so I also worked at DHS as a division director, managing oversight of roughly 4,000 EMTs scattered throughout the southern border. I will say that from a federal space and from my unique perspective, I've worked on diplomatic affairs, legislative affairs, military affairs, you name it. I mean, just national security matters. I mean, I've worked in so many different fields and characteristics that I was ultimately recruited by some really compelling people that felt that I should do them the honor of being their representative. I'll be honest, though, too. I think God has put this on my heart. My family and my wife and I, we've not wanted to be apathetic bystanders, just watching this nation continue in the trajectory it's going. So we spent a lot of time in prayer. We spent a lot of time trying to dedicate this decision to God and thinking about, what would a humble servant leader do? When people are asking you to serve, when people are recruiting you and seeking you out and telling you that we need a new kind of government back, we need a new kind of principled conservative that believes in the foundation of the Republican movement, not necessarily what it's become now. And so that's what I'm running on. So for me, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of close discussion. And then one last thing, a good friend of mine, Nick Freitas, who's just remarkable. He's my current state delegate. He's a former Green Beret. So we have, of course, an Army-Navy rivalry that we joke and we try to throw snippets at each other. But Nick ultimately asked me. He ran in 2020, and he was unsuccessful in taking the seat. But he's really just such a remarkable individual, an incredible legislator. He spent a lot of time mentoring me and speaking with me about ultimately when people were looking to him, he felt that God was telling him to look to me. So that's probably the decision.
That's so powerful.
That we came to. Thank you. It's just I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a Christian man. I'm running because at the end of the day, my kids, I'm looking at their future. I'm looking at the blessings and the richness of this country and just such amazing opportunities it provides to live with principle and to live in peace. And I'm just frustrated at seeing the future that my children are likely to inherit. So I'm done being an apathetic bystander. I'm stepping onto a new battlefield because I think that we have a nation to save.
So Cameron, the district you're running in, Congressional District 7, is Cook rates it as a lean Democrat district, and the current representative is Spanberg, and I guess she's not running again. Do you see that changing? I know one of the things we talked with Hung Cao about, who's running for the Senate, is I guess that Virginia is a purple state, but I guess it's slowly moving more red. Is that the nature of your district, or is Washington just so and the federal government so dominant?
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of a unique circumstance that we're in. Abigail Spanberger. So this district has a lot of roots in the Tea Party movement and in a lot of different elements of just strong, principled conservatives that are trying to limit executive power and intrusion into their daily lives in a way that was never intended by our founders. So in 2014, Eric Cantor, the second most powerful Republican in the House of Representatives, was unseated in his own primary by David Bratt.
Yeah, I love that
really
race.
Remarkable, who was a Freedom Caucus candidate. He was one of the founders of the Freedom Caucus. And so David Bratt's endorsed me, and I'm incredibly honored to have his support. He's had a big presence at Liberty University. That race showed some of the underbelly that is really present within this district that's currently, I live in Orange, Virginia, about 3 miles from where James Madison is laid to rest. So this district has such rich history and principled conservatism that when Abigail Spanberger upseated David Bratt in 2018, she ran on the Democratic Party platform of that time, which was radically anti-Trump, and to be honest, was just sort of an unconventional, more moderate Democratic Party, at least at the time. They were never Trumpers, and that's fine. The Democratic Party now has moved substantially to the left, and I don't mean a little bit. I mean dramatically to the left. And so she's vacating the seat, and she never really got off that 2018 platform. She tried to placate herself as a moderate Democrat, and her voting record says otherwise. But publicly, she's very personable. People like her. She engages well. She's very active in the community. And those are good things, except for her policy advocacy. Having said that, because she's vacating her seat early, this is a once-in-a-30-year kind of shift. The underbelly of unseating a moderate Democrat in a very moderate district is exceedingly difficult, especially one that's well-disciplined like Abigail Spanberger was and well-funded. So because she's vacating, the whole calculus on this district changes. Right now we're anticipating a several-point shift in favor of Republicans, and polling will confirm this especially soon, but we're already seeing the early signs of it. Number two, the Democratic opponents we're running against like I said earlier, are radically to the left of where she was in 2018 when she first ran. Abigail Spanberger was smart. She was on a conference call with the Democratic conference, and she rebuked AOC and the squad for supporting the defund the police movement. And that became another, I think, survival technique that she applied because she wanted to garner support from local law enforcement. The new Democratic Party is very different. It's very, very different. So they're all trying to out-progressive each other, which means we have a unique opportunity. This is, in my opinion, this is a seat that absolutely will favor a strong conservative over a progressive any day. So that's what we're seeing. Glenn Youngkin won this district by several points.
Excellent.
So it is a winnable seat. And he ran on kitchen table issues, just connecting with average, everyday voters on principled matters. You know, Terry McAuliffe lost the race to Glenn Youngkin because he dared to say, no, parents shouldn't be able to choose what their kids are learning in school. I mean, I'm sorry. Even moderate Democrats look at that and hear, what? What are you talking about? This is insane. So that's what we're facing in this district. And I'm running as not only a Republican, but as a Republican who's very, very willing to criticize the Republican Party when we get things wrong. That is the appetite. People are feeling disenfranchised, disengaged, and disconnected from their leaders in a way that's very dangerous. And so I think the platform I'm running on, I'm gaining ground every day. I'm talking to even progressive and moderate business owners. They love my economic policies I advocate for because I'm a pretty radical libertarian when it comes to financial issues. Balance the budget, pay down the debt, restrain the federal intrusion, really deregulate our economy so that people can take more home, that people can afford more payroll, you name it. And so that's the recipe of what people want now.
Well, I want to ask you, and I know John will jump in here too, because we want to talk your issues, endorsements, and then who the competition is, because we've got to take them out, because you've got two people now that love all your platforms because we've been researching you. But the number one issue that John and I talk about all the time, and you've been part of the Homeland Security, is this week the border was overrun, I think by 600 or 700 people. All the gotaways. I mean, now there's like 12 million people. We don't know who the hell any of these people are. So, and then we've had the college student that was killed. Both my children live in New York City, so I'm always like panicked. So talk about the border issue, because there's not a lot of there's not that many congressmen, congresswomen that are fighting the fight. I mean, Congressman Gates is from our area. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a fighter. So where do you stand on the border and getting this under control? And then are we going to deport these illegals out of here that I don't know who you are?
Yeah. So I think we have to. I worked at DHS for about 3 years as a division director for emergency medical services. So I maintained oversight of roughly 4,000 EMTs. And these EMTs were really remarkable people. They work, these men and women that are brave. They're working on the southern border, given a job that, frankly, I don't even know how they come to work every day, because they're constantly being messed with, and the policies of this administration are completely in contradiction to what's best for our national interest. So the morale is the lowest as possible. What I can tell your listeners, everything you see in the news about the border is worse. No matter what you see on TV, no matter these graphic images and videos, it is so much worse. I have talked with and I've met with so many people. We've had Border Patrol agents that have been assaulted and flat out beaten up by groups of migrants. I mean, it is the Wild West on parts of the southern border. And I don't think the American people really understand it. I also don't think the American people understand the cost. We are now in a position where we are spending more money than has ever happened in the United States history on southern border enforcement, and yet we have the most open and porous system. What's worse, we have industries in the United States, faith-based industries, that are being co-opted, receiving and I say this very clearly, hundreds of millions of dollars of federal grants to relocate migrants to the United States.
Let's see. Is he still there? Let's see.
Nope.
He might have
I'm not
dropped.
hearing anything.
Yeah, he might have dropped off.
Oh,
All right.
can you hear me?
Okay, now
There
we
you
hear
go.
you. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were talking about that we've got all these faith-based organizations that are receiving millions of dollars, which John and I know about that because we're Catholic, and we know one of them's a Catholic one. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Catholic Charities of America has received almost $200 million per year through federal grants to relocate migrants to the U.S. interior. It's just astonishing. This is insanity. And so we can't continue this. We also have Lutheran Immigration Relocation Services and many others. They're making profit off relocating migrants to the U.S. interior. It's unforgivable. So I'm a border hawk. I've seen the border. We saw it after the transition of the administration. For a few weeks, we saw all the intelligence reports showing that the border was about to fall wide open. We knew it. We saw everything being structured. We had plenty of preparation and time. The policies still changed, and in 3 days, we lost complete operational control of this border. And it was just remarkable how inept and, frankly, how willfully malfeasant we had many in our government being. So that's what we're seeing now. I'm an absolute border hawk. We should not be sending money to defend nations overseas, such as with Ukraine or with the funding aid that we give towards the government of Jordan for their national sovereignty and borders, if we can't even secure our own border. It's absurd. So my opinion is the government, our federal government, only has a few very specific enumerated powers and authorities. National immigration and southern border enforcement is one of them. We need to get back to the basics. If our government can't secure our southern border, it's not because it's not funded enough. We keep dumping more and more money at these problems without realizing we have a policy issue. It's not a matter of dollars. So the American people deserve better. And my position is if we're not willing to actually secure the southern border, then maybe we should consider shutting the government down. Maybe we should consider drastically overhauling what we fund and how we pay for things, because this is not acting as a fiduciary for the American people. It's putting our nation at risk. It is any day now, God help us, we are going to see terrorist attacks taken out in this country because we have no control and no understanding of who's coming here. Yep, exactly. So my position is I'm an absolute border hawk.
Okay, I love that.
Cameron, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about with your district, and I wanted to get a sense of the sentiment in there, and just for comparison purposes, I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia, and when you were talking about history of an area, it is so powerful. The way I grew up, the Constitution, the Revolution, that means something very different to me than apparently a lot of Americans these days. And one of the popular songs is Richmond, north of Richmond. And your district is right there north of Richmond. Is that something that strikes a chord? I've found so many places where there's conservatives that song has struck a chord with so many people. And I'm just curious if you've seen any of that in that area.
We definitely have. So the Richmond, north of Richmond song was really kind of compelling and unique. But, man, it really connected with people in such a real and practical way. I think what we've seen now is kind of a revolt of the citizens, of the constituents here, where they're frustrated because they feel like it really almost doesn't matter which party you vote for. The issues that we're finding concerning aren't being addressed. And that's a real problem. That's a real tangible problem that people need to recognize. So this district, especially because of its rich history with James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and many others, is growing especially frustrated because we see the southern border open. We see more social aid and benefit going towards, migrants that are here illegally, that are being shipped to the U.S. interior. And we have farmers in rural communities that are really struggling. We have gas prices that are high. We have inflation hitting our grocery bills. And I mean, it's absurd. And we're spending money and we're being told by the traditional Republican movement, oh, hey, this was a legislative and conservative victory. No, it wasn't. We're just adding insult to injury here. So I think at the end of the day, my frustration with what we're seeing right now and what I think is growing is that people want us to get back to the basics. They want our government to work. They want our government to serve our interests, our needs, and they want to ensure that they're advocating for the average, everyday American who frankly is neglected, especially with business owners. I mean, there's veteran support is so critical to my platform, but we also have small business owners that are left out to dry. They're being targeted by the IRS. They're being targeted by the ATF and other regulatory agencies. And when are they going to get advocated for? When are we going to talk about expanding the Tax Cut and Job Act? When are we going to talk about regulatory reform so that people can take home more of their hard-earned dollars and not fund pet projects and programs? When are we going to talk about restraining congressional or government spending? and so that people can keep more of their hard-earned cash as opposed to just dumping it in the state treasury to get put on, some new climate initiative that doesn't actually serve the American people. People are pissed. People are getting frustrated. So I think that song was amazing. I think it exactly resonated not only the sentiment of what's going on here in Virginia, but I'll be honest, I think that was a nationwide sensation of virtually every American saying, you know what? Yeah, that's right. These rich men north of Richmond are sort of, and it's not just men, I say that allegorically, but these rich folks north of Richmond, they're really not working for us. Because at the end of the day, I tell people, our tax code is so complicated. You know why? Because it wasn't written for you and I. It was written for lobbyists, and it was written for special interest groups. And that's what we need to realize. So, and it took someone, ironically, like Donald Trump to come out and expose things like this. So, look, I think the era of the past practice is over, and I think it's now time for we the people to step up and to start demanding better from our government. But it starts everywhere, state, locally, nationally, you name it. We have to affect it everywhere. Even our school boards have now become hot seats. So I agree with a lot of things said in that song, and I think that this is a unique opportunity we have to really rise up and reclaim the authority the American people have.
So where do you find yourself on the spectrum of Republicans in Congress? I'm sure you're aware that Ken Buck is quit, reducing our military, our advantage, the Republican advantage in the House. And I'm trying to remember who somebody else quit yesterday.
Gallagher. Was it Gallagher? Yeah. So I'm so disappointed. He was one of my favorites. I'm like, what the hell?
And that one was so outrageous that
oh my gosh.
He resigned the day after it stops a special election from happening.
It was
so his district has no representation.
It was absolutely disgusting.
So Republicans are not, they're
not doing the right thing. I'm like, who's on our team, Cameron?
So where are you on the spectrum? Say Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene to a Ken Buck kind of spectrum.
So I'm pledged to join the Freedom Caucus right now. The Freedom Caucus has actually endorsed me, if that tells you anything about my political philosophy. I've been endorsed by Senator Rand Paul, by Thomas Massey from Kentucky, also by Mark Green, chairman of the Homeland Committee, Scott Perry, Bob Good, Eli Crane, Anna Paulina Luna. I mean, just so many amazing patriots. Yep. Ralph Norman. I mean, just Tom Homan, even former director of ICE for President Trump.
You forgot Rand Paul.
I'm a strong constitutional conservative.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I'm a strong constitutional conservative, and of the Republican majority, we really only have about 80 to 90 really strong conservatives. I wish that weren't the case, but it's just reality. We have a lot that are very weak on fiscal issues. They say wonderful things. They promise great platform positions, but they vote very moderate. And it's really unfortunate, and I get frustrated by seeing a lot of that. So I'm on the right flank of the party, but I really bring, when it comes to regulation and when it comes to government intrusion, I'm very much in kind of the libertarian element of the camp thinking, what is the government doing now? We never gave it these authorities on purpose, so we need to restrain executive intrusion drastically. So on fiscal issues, I'm a staunch libertarian, deregulate our economy, let people bring home more pay. On social issues, look, I'm a strong Christian conservative. I believe firmly in the Second Amendment. I'm pro-life. I mean, these are not things to run away from or to shy away from. These are things that I believe in very firmly. And so at the end of the day, I plan to join the Freedom Caucus. I've given the honor to join that. And it's not a perfectly homogenous group. There is some differentiation between different, subgroups of the Freedom Caucus. But I'm one of the conservatives that believes the Republican Party has disappointed the American people time and time again.
Yeah.
And we need to connect with the American people and we need to legitimately criticize at times when the Republican Party has failed. So I don't prop up parties. I believe in principle. I'm a man of principle, and I believe you are who the company you keep. So I want to keep company who are fighting for this nation. I'd be honored for Matt Gaetz' endorsement. He has not endorsed me yet. I hope that at some point he will. I'd be honored for his endorsement, as well as many other great patriots and freedom fighters that are on the side of liberty and freedom for the American people, as well as fiscal restraint.
He's been on our show, so we'll have to work that for you. He's a regular. I know him well for 10 years. He needs to get with the program.
Please endorse me.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that he's criticized for, and this is where I differ with Newt Gingrich in particular, because Newt hates hates Matt Gaetz for what he did.
And so many people hate him, and
but Matt was absolutely right, because he says if we don't get back to regular order, if we don't get back to passing appropriation bills the way we're supposed to, instead of these continuing resolutions, which have been going
we're
on
over
for
that
year after year after year, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I am too.
And it's like, why can't you people do your job? And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to force them to do their job, and they don't want to do it. And how do you do a sea change?
Thomas Massie gave a very I have to give him some credit here. He gave a very principled response and rebuttal to why he didn't support the removal of Kevin McCarthy. Now, ultimately, I didn't agree with him, but that being said, I understand his rationale. Kevin McCarthy did give significant concessions in contrast to what Boehner and Speaker Ryan did before when they were in the Speaker's office. So I will say the one vote to vacate and then the privileged filing for removal of the Speaker, as well as other things, regular order, 72-hour rules, these were things that Speaker McCarthy did have to capitulate on in order to assume the gavel. And when we removed Speaker McCarthy, those were potentially up for grabs. And so what we've seen yesterday in this omnibus bill, which, by the way, I'm radically opposed to because I think it's irresponsible, what we saw there was, again, the Republican Party and the Republican leadership not adhering to some of the rules that had previously been promised. So Thomas Massie's concern was, if we remove Kevin McCarthy, who knows what the next deal will look like? We made great concessions. Kevin's not perfect. He doesn't have a really conservative record, but he's certainly better than Boehner or Ryan was, and I think he's right in that sense. However, I still supported the removal of Kevin McCarthy because the man wasn't a true conservative, in my opinion. Number two, Kevin McCarthy also really messed with a lot of primaries throughout this country, not in a good way. Now, he helped out some great people, Morgan Luttrell, Patriot from Texas. I served with him at SEAL Team 8. Kevin McCarthy really helped Morgan when he was in a crowded primary. I recognize that. People have personal agendas and they have personal loyalty. I understand. Kevin McCarthy also, though, really hurt some candidates in primaries and also withheld funding from candidates who won primaries that he said he would support as the leader of the party, but ultimately didn't. So he's a mixed bag, and that's why I thought, you know what, he's not evil, but there's better options out there. I was hopeful for Speaker Johnson, but I'll be very transparent with your viewers. If Speaker Johnson is going to be representing more of what we've seen yesterday, I think we need new leadership again.
Well,
this is a very difficult road to go down.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is going after him. So,
I
so I've been putting on X that maybe she needs to be in the speaker position because we need an iron lady we need somebody with cojones that is going to fight the fight. And these people are so weak, Cameron. They're weak.
Well, Veronica, I disagree strongly with what she's doing because there's no plan. We're back to chaos. Yeah. If they have a plan, that's fine.
Well, somebody needs to come up with the plan. If that's Cameron that can write the plan, let's do it. Or let you and I write it.
We don't need to be. We're shooting ourselves in the foot.
And I do like the speaker now. I think he's a godly man. Yeah, the quitting. Right. I'm just beyond. The Gallagher pushed me over the edge yesterday, and
Right. Yeah. But how close are we to giving the Democrats control?
I'm very concerned and that's what I wanted to ask you because Cameron,
one vote away now.
I don't want to remove Speaker Johnson right now. I don't know that I fully agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene's filing. Having said that, on specifically the matter of removing Speaker Johnson, I'm going to reserve my final judgment until I talk to friends of mine. I have friends who are currently serving in Congress. Yeah. And there's a lot of backdoor conversations that are happening.
And we've talked to them offline. They're just exactly, if they get the votes, they don't want to take people out. Even I've been told, even rhinos. Correct. Because most of the time a rhino will vote with you, is what I've been told by some higher ups. So, I get it.
I just want to make sure that if this is pursued, it has to be done a little bit cleaner than maybe how it was done last time, so that the American people feel. This isn't just creating chaos. I also think, to be honest, though, about Kevin McCarthy, criticize the process with all you will. The fact is, when Kevin lost his speakership, he then vacated his seat not long afterwards.
Right.
Now, granted, that's a seat that's projected to be won by a Republican, but still, we are now left without that vote in the House right now. in a way that shows, okay, so it really wasn't about public service. It was about your public image. I'm frustrated with that. Gallagher, I think look, I understand anyone saying, look, I have a personal matter to contend with. I can't do this anymore. I totally recognize that. Public service should be a service. Having said that, you have constituents that you are now disenfranchising that are expecting you to advocate for them, that now are facing the issue of whether or not they're even going to have representation before November.
Yeah,
Gallagher,
terrific.
I think, is a categorical failure. You either sit your full term or you leave now and let someone else replace you before the end to do a special election. So I think his decision is irresponsible and very selfish.
Yeah, I'm angry.
Look, I pray for the man's family. I pray to God that everything is okay with his family.
Yeah.
And I hope that it's nothing dramatic. Having said that, I think the manner in which he's going about vacating a seat is irresponsible and is unfair for the American people, especially his constituents who sent him to D.C. So I'm frustrated at things like that. So I just want to ensure if we're going to have a conversation about removing more people, we need to really have a coherent plan. The same thing goes with George Santos. I've been very critical of Santos. I think the guy's a piece of work and never should have been elected in the first place. Having said that, Republicans were more willing to kick out Santos, who, my point was, this is a categorical mistake. If ever you wanted to show that people were out of touch with the average American voter, there's a process to remove someone like Santos. It's called a recall. Let the constituents of his district do that. Instead, no, Congress knows better. We're going to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of voters.
On a funny note, he was throwing his hat back into the ring last week as a Republican running for I guess Congress, but then this week he changed. He's so pissed at the Republicans, he became an independent with his Botox lips. So I'm like, oh my gosh.
And the part that I thought was so funny was, here you had the Republican that was head of the ethics committee that basically arranged to get him kicked out, was saying, well, he's a liar. And it's like, well, show me somebody in Congress. If that's your standard for kicking people out. You need to kick them all out.
Oh, my gosh. Well, Cameron, I wanted to ask you because John and I, we're Catholic and we're huge pro-lifers. And that's one of your platforms that you stand with. And, you've got the 3 beautiful children. And it seems like it's so disgusting that one of the number one platforms for the left and Kamala Harris is fighting for reproductive freedom for women and women's health. And to think, if you go on the White House Instagram or Kamala's, it's constantly pushing that, even AG Letitia from New York, had that this week on her X. So talk about why you're such a pro-lifer, because John and I fight all the time for the unborn, and I cannot believe this is like their number one. We have border, and they have killing babies. Yeah.
I'm a pro-life man because my Christian faith compels me to be. I believe every human being is created in the image of God, right, wrong, or indifferent. And again, to draw awareness, we had National Down Syndrome Day? A few days ago.
Right. And
there's a huge movement of people aborting children because they have these genetic abnormalities. And I think that doesn't show the goodness of God. That doesn't show the goodness of inherent worth. I remind people I'm a conservative because I believe that each individual has inherent worth and value in the sight of our Maker, and that our government should represent the best defense for their values, which is why I advocate for lower taxes, because I'd rather you use your agency and have the ability to say where your money goes, which is why I'm a staunch defender of individual liberties, because I believe you should be able to live free without intrusion and unrestricted by this government, which is why I advocate for so many principles, because it's my belief that each human being has worth, which is why I believe I don't like minimum sentencing requirements within our criminal justice system, because I believe every individual facing judicial recourse should have the opportunity to hear their case and to have it argued before a judge independently without bias and without stipulation. So I'm a very firm advocate on people's inherent worth. And when it comes to life, I just believe, my wife and I, our youngest child almost passed. He had a very significant health issue when he was born. I won't go into all the parameters of it, but we almost lost him when he was born. If he had been born about 12 hours later, he likely would have been a stillborn because of a blood condition. So he was flown up to UNC. He almost passed. He received an exchange transfusion of blood, and he was in the NICU for over a month. And for my wife and I, we named him Salem, a root word for peace in Hebrew, because it brought about a peace in our marriage at a time when we were really struggling. And to be honest, there were a lot of marital issues that we were dealing with, and, not infidelity or anything like that, but we were just, we weren't getting along as well as we could have been. We were kind of, really adversarial in different ways, and it really ushered in a period of peace because of God's goodness. So as a father who almost lost a child, I'll never know what it's like to be one who has. But I can tell you that the feeling and the sense of joy at knowing that our child would survive this condition is nothing like you could ever imagine. And I just believe firmly that these children should be advocated for firmly. And so I think we as a culture, we have to recognize that there's a cultural war at stake here. The Democratic Party platform and position is abortion up to the moment of birth under the Women's Healthcare Protection Act. That's a position that 90% of Americans think is too far. So I'm very clear. Republicans need to stop retreating from this issue. We need to go on the offense. 90% of Americans believe that there should be limitations to abortion. There is nothing radical or obscene about the fact that that's what we hold to. I think we need to be very clear in principle. We can have a discussion on when and where, but at the end of the day, the fact that we believe there should be limitations is nothing that we should shy away from. And I'm very clear and firm on that. The Democratic Party, if anything, they need to justify why they are so radical on this issue.
Yeah, it's horrific.
People said, I'm moving to Europe. Like, okay, go to France. They have a 6-week ban. Like, after 6 weeks, you can't get an abortion. Like, they have much more conservative laws on abortion than we do. And people think, oh, America's tyrannical. It's not. People are out of touch with reality, and this is the problem that we have with social media in today's era, is we have an entire generation of kids that think things that are categorically untrue. So, look, it's frustrating, and I'm exceedingly worried about the trajectory of this nation, which is why I think we just need to show the goodness of God and advocate for every individual. Plus, I've had family members survive sexual assault. Very egregious, just horrible sexual assault. I'll never know what it's like to be someone who's experienced that personally, but I do know what it's like to love people who have. And I can say very firmly, I can have empathy and grace for both a woman facing a critical decision as well as an unborn child. And that's what I think that we're missing from this conversation. So I also have some very radical positions when it comes to the adoption laws that we have in this country. A friend of mine spent almost $20,000 and has waited 1.5 years to adopt a child. Why are we dealing with all this bureaucratic nightmare with the adoption agencies? And number two, why is it cheaper for us through trade policy to import children from overseas than to adopt children that are already here that should be loved and that could be taken into a loving home? These are examples of government bureaucracy that's not serving the people. It's serving interests and lobbyists. So, look, I think that answered my question, but ultimately I'm an advocate for the individual, and I believe that we should show the goodness of God in our policy.
Cameron, one of the things that brought to mind when you were talking was we'd talked to Kathy Barnett, who was running for the Senate in Pennsylvania, and she is her mother was raped
at 11.
And her grandparents intervened and saved her from being aborted. And about powerful
she'd never really
testimony.
Talked about that before, and she did on our show, and we were all crying because
it was powerful.
People forget about the baby, and she stated, I would have never been able to run against Dr. Oz for Senate. Right. Work for Vivek Ramaswamy, have 2 kids, have a wonderful husband, and be an African American leader out there. And so it was very powerful. Well, we love that you support the pro-life initiative. The other thing I was very intrigued with, and Congressman Gates aligns with you as well, is the military members that were kicked out for not taking the vax. Congressman Gates
Oh,
wants
my
them
gosh.
to be reinstated if they were up for a promotion, to receive back pay and be promoted. And so he's been a fighter for that as well. And part of the military, I'd love to hear your take on too. And John and I, like General Milley drives us insane because there's no white supremacy. I mean, I wore a uniform for 20 years, people.
Yeah.
I was treated so equal.
This guy is a leader.
Well, there's so much about the military, and then how he came out and he didn't know what was happening, when we pulled out of Afghanistan. And anyways, I just feel like our military, we need to fight for people, the good people, to come back. And then the general, John and I've had, a lot of people that have worked for big time generals that have written books, and I've had generals on too, but there's this narrative. They get so political when they're up there, and that we're woke in the military, and why recruiting's bad. So tell me just your thoughts on the military as a whole, and what you'll do for the military when you are in Congress. And you were a stud Navy SEAL, everybody, a stud. So.
Well, I would love to fire a lot of our military leadership. I'll be very clear and transparent about that, which
me too.
I'm sure the general officers will not like hearing, but I'd just be very transparent. I respect Matt Gaetz tremendously. He's the only one that asked this question, but I also got to give a lot of credit to Andy Biggs and a few others, Corey Mills, who've been advocating for service members that have really been prosecuted. When we talk about supporting veterans, everyone likes to think about, health benefits and, these support, capabilities at the VA. And those are all wonderful things, but I've been very, very clear about this. The best way to help out veterans and service members is by advocating for their constitutional rights. 8,500 service members were kicked out of the military for an unconstitutional mandate. And they've not been made whole. They've not been reinstated. In fact, when when Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of the DOD, was asked about reinstating them, he said no on the floor of the U.S. House. So that's now public. It's a public deposition. It's a matter of public record. That shows you very clearly this government is not working for us. This government believes that unconstitutional mandates are totally fair game. Well, no, they're not, and things will only be fixed when we, the people, stand up to it. So I've been very clear. I signed the Declaration of Military Accountability. It was an honor to sign that with 230 other great patriots. The point there being, this was one of the greatest constitutional challenges that we had of our day, and most people were silent about it. And that's just egregious, in my opinion. So I think very clearly we have to reconcile this. We have to fix our military. We have to ensure that they're upholding the rights of every service member and that they're focusing on wartime lethality, not these cultural issues.
Yes.
Our military is there to defend our great nation. And so the way to do that, well, number one, I'd love to restrict funding to the military until they publicly declare, yes, this was unconstitutional. Congress did it back in 2022, but they failed to do it in 2023. I was very frustrated that happened. Number two, I'd love to fire a lot of high-ranking officers in the military or hold them to publicly account and give their positions for things that they stood for, which ultimately in court were determined to be unconstitutional. When do we hold them accountable? So I'd love to strip their qualified immunity. I'd love to ensure that if they violated the law, they're held personally accountable, not just the military in general. Because I think right now we need cowboy generals again who are willing to defend our rights, but are willing to be bold and be brave to actually advocate for liberty and freedom in the right way. We don't need a political class of high-ranking officers that are only looking at their promotion. So that's my take on it. I think we have categorical issues. My hope is to stand up in that entire panel of my team. If I'm elected, Lord willing, I would hope to have a portion of my team, and I'm already looking at key individuals to recruit, to specifically look at military accountability. How do we ensure that our military is focusing on the purposes it has to be on, and how do we hold it accountable when it gets involved in matters that it should not be?
Well, sign me up.
I am.
Sign me up.
I'm 100% behind you on that, because that is a constant theme on our show.
Yes.
Is the lack of accountability for the military in Washington, and not just military, but but particularly Veronica and I are we're neck deep in this, as far as the military goes, to understand it. But nobody's held accountable for anything these days, and that's one of the things I want to ask you: can it be fixed? I mean, I saw the Navy shipbuilding plan came out this week, and I was appalled at looking at it. And it's one of those things where it says, well, to get to a 430 ship Navy, we're going to have to drop down to 260 first over the next 5 years. And I'm like, you people are insane.
Especially with China's number one threat out there. Dear
no
Lord.
Rhyme or reason to this. They're retiring ships that are 5 or 6 or 10 years old. We're spending billions and billions, and they're saying, hey, we need more billions of dollars. It's like you can't figure out what war you're trying to fight. Why do you need more billions of dollars, to waste?
I think it can be fixed, but I think it's going to take a warrior general or a warrior admiral to really come in and lead with vigor. So, honest to God, I really hope at some point someone like Jocko Willink becomes the next Secretary of Defense, because I think he would be astonishing. I think he would clean house, and I think he would make sure everyone focuses on, you know what, we don't need to invest all this money in hypersonic missiles. What we need to get back to is wartime preparedness, mass movement of troops across geographical regions for nation-state conflict in a first-world setting. We really need to take a firm
and
look
not
at what,
pride luncheons and pride,
Exactly.
I'm so over
exactly.
that.
We need to stop having these woke officers talking about cultural diversity in the sense that, hey, isn't it great that we're affirming trans service members? I'm sorry.
No, I don't need that.
That is such a distraction from the battlefield.
It is a distraction.
That is such a distraction.
Yeah. Okay,
exactly.
well, Cameron, we've got to do, because you can't be here all day, even though I want to talk to you all day. So we're going to do a rapid fire. I call this my rapid fire. So I'm going to tell you, a quick thing, and you just give me like a quick sentence or two, because if not, we'll talk to you all day, and then your wife will be mad at us. Yep. So to start, Trump and Biden, tell us your thoughts real quick, because, just real fast. John and I think this election in November is critical.
Yeah. I think Biden's incompetent. I think he's going to lose in November, or they might replace him. I'm a supporter of President Trump. The man's not perfect, but the man has some amazing policy positions for the American people. He's working hard for the American people, so I'm firm in my support for him.
Okay. Israel.
I'm a big supporter. I'm a Zionist, so I'm a huge supporter of Israel. I always will be. So I think Israel needs to take the fight to Hamas. My hope is that eventually there will be peace, but that has to be on the terms of the Israelis and the Palestinians, not the international community.
Ukraine.
I do not want to send any more money to the Ukraine right now. I think it's an absolute waste, and it lacks accountability.
Taiwan.
Big supporter of Taiwan. I think we need to look at our economic policies towards China to create a deterrent, but I do not want to see China invade Taiwan. I also, that's a really difficult topic to talk about because there's so many nuanced issues. At the end of the day, huge supporter of Taiwan. I think they need to be one of our strategic partners in the region, and I believe in supporting and defending them if at all possible, but I do not want the United States to get drawn into a war with China.
Okay, red flag laws.
I do not support them.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about Second Amendment.
I'm a constitutional conservative, so I think that tells you where I stand. I'm pretty firm.
You like guns, I guess.
I do not support infringing on people's Second Amendment rights, period.
Okay. Well, those are, John, did I miss any issues that you wanted, John?
I think that we've covered a
lot.
A whole spectrum here.
So my next question is, there's a lot of people running as Republicans and Dems, and you've got a lot of money. So how's it looking for you? Because like when Hung Cao took out like 9 people, I think, in his Republican race. He just couldn't take out the loser Dem. So
and he didn't have the local Republican Party of Virginia was not supporting him either. They were actually against him.
And the governor stepped up for him. Is the governor? You think he'll make an endorsement for you?
So I don't think the governor will get involved in the primary. I actually don't think the governor should be involved in primaries. I think it's improper. That's just my personal take on it. Just because the office that he sits in, it has unique influence.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to see him sway it. I think it's really about the voters of the Virginia 7th. And right now, look, I'm gaining support every single day. I'm running as a firm constitutional conservative, as the constitutional conservative in this race. I'm running to pledge to join the Freedom Caucus, which people love and connect with here very well. So I think at the end of the day, look, we're picking up steam. We're kicking rear ends and taking names right now, and we're really running hard. And I'm one of the only candidates in this race that is firmly committing to key positions my platform and on what I advocate for. And I think that's what people want. They want to be held accountable. They want a public official that's willing to commit to key issues, even if they're controversial. They want to see that you're a fighter and that you're willing to say, yes, this is what I believe in and here's why. I'll debate with you all day long, but these are my values. And so that's what I'm running on too. So I think right now I'm definitely the kind of candidate that I think voters in Virginia 7 are going to favor, but it's ultimately up to them. I'd be honored to serve them. I would love to be an ambassador for them, because that's what I see this as, a servant leader role, serving their will, not my own, not agendas, but really making sure that power is vested back in the hands of the people. And so that kind of message is incredibly popular right now, and I think we're going to do remarkably well. So I'm a staunch, limited government constitutional conservative. I'm also a father, husband, and Christian running on family values. So as I say, back to the basics. That's my platform. Back to the basics.
And how will your Navy SEAL training help you in Congress? Because, I mean, you know how to...
I was raised as a fighter, so I definitely, when it comes to a fight, I think we keep being told by the Republican Party, hey, let's elect people that are more moderate because, well, we can win more elections. It doesn't work when we put more jerseys on our team, but we lose the game. So I'm a firm position of, if you want to win races, if you want to win seats, we need to start electing more fighters, because people will rally behind them and will believe in them, especially fighters that invoke a message of hope. And that's really what I'm running on, is a message of hope that we can be prosperous again. We can be a nation that restores its foundation again if we only have the will to do it. So that's my solution. We need to put more fighters in D.C., not people that are just say and promise great things, but people that show the scars. You know, I signed on to a lawsuit with the Feds for Freedom on the Fifth Circuit Court to oppose the vaccine mandates, and we won in court against the federal government when everyone said we couldn't. So I've got the scars to prove that I'm a fighter. I'm a defender of freedom and liberty, and it would be my honor to represent the American people.
Love it. And people can find you on Twitter at Cameron VA. Your website is CameronHamilton.com, and then you're on Facebook, Cameron Hamilton for Congress. So what a pleasure. You might be my new favorite Navy SEAL now, Cameron. Don't tell my fighter pilot husband. My fighter pilot husband will be jealous. So,
well, God bless you both. Thank you so much.
Godspeed. And it's been a pleasure, such a pleasure. And we'll be right back on Veronica Live.